Hello and welcome to the Men's Corner podcast. I'm George Stumenov. It's great to have you here, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'd like to share a story with you about my experience with food, especially overeating, and how that related to a very interesting part of me that I recently rediscovered. Acting. The childhood joy that I used to have with acting. To give you a little bit of background about overeating, I've always been an overeater. I remember from my very, very early age, I learned to read very early in life, and I remember I would eat and read all the time. All my books from childhood are smeared with chocolate or honey or homemade jam. I would just put it on huge slices of bread and butter and homemade honey, bread and butter and homemade jam or chocolate, especially sweet things. I would comfort myself. I would lose myself for hours with the books. Even when I was sitting at the table with my parents, I would still have a book, and they criticized me, but not really strongly enough. And so I always had a book in front of me just to zone out, really tune out. And I would eat and I would read. Later, I started to watch and eat, but I always had to eat while I was taking in content since I was very, very young. So this is my story with overeating and how it started. It has been a huge part of me until very recently. I tried everything in terms of diet. Even in my days when I was doing a lot of weightlifting and I was huge, I always struggled to maintain my weight. I always struggled with being lean. Very few times I've been lean, and that came at a price. I had to push myself to do cardio that I didn't want to do. Everything felt like work. When it came to losing weight, everything felt like work. Until I just gave up on trying to be someone that I was not and started to rediscover myself. Back in 2011, I embarked on a spiritual journey. I was in Zambia and you could say I met God. It was a journey of faith, and I haven't stopped on that journey. I'm getting deeper and deeper into things and deeper into who I was meant to be. And I knew that who I was meant to be was not some big bulky guy. Some people are. It's how you're built, but I'm not. I'm not a huge big guy. So I tried to be this huge 14 stone, 92, 3 kilograms guy, just lifting these big weights. But that wasn't me. And I had to overeat. I never stopped overeating. The whole process. Even when I was at my fittest, I was still overeating. Until 2020, when something interesting happened. I had already given up on trying to be, this muscle guy. So I was ready to receive the new. You need to give up on the old in order to receive the new. And at this point, I was at the new frontier of my journey. I felt dissatisfied. Something was not working. I had to reclaim something lost and forgotten. But whenever I tried to do that, it's never easy. Because that's been part of my journey. It's never easy to reclaim something which you've lost for decades ago because you don't know what it is. You just know that things are no longer working the way they are. The spiritual journey, said someone, I think Howard Macy, his name is, he said, the spiritual journey is always frontier. It can never be made suburban. I was settled. I liked the suburban life. With my food, with my routines, I knew exactly what I liked to eat, and I was settled. But spirituality cannot be made suburban. And I was called into the more. I was called into the frontier. I stepped into that frontier, giving up and said, okay, this is not working. What is it that my soul is longing for? What is it that I'm suppressing with my routines and with my food and with my predictability? And then after overeating, I would always hate myself, feeling, oh my goodness, look at my belly. But I knew at this stage that fitness wouldn't do it, because fitness was just putting a plaster, a band-aid on my wounds, and I had given up on that. Not on fitness per se, but on using fitness as a way to make me feel better. I just wanted to find out why I needed it in the first place. And so the men from my group, and thank you guys, you know who you are, and I'm going to name you actually, whether you like it or not. My good mentor and friend Keith, Michael Finfrock, Pete McMullen, and Jacob Brackett. You guys have been amazing. You encouraged me so much, especially in that time, 2020, when I was rediscovering something, because I had reached a part of me that was young, that was abandoned, rejected, abused, and it wanted to act. This came as a surprise, but a little bit of a background. I remember as a very young boy, I used to practice this acting, scenes from movies, from westerns, and from with my plastic guns. I would shoot at the bad guys and then pretend to be shot and die against the wall. And then, for some reason, I had tears in my eyes. I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I had tears in my eyes every time when I was acting out these battles and my passion for fighting and dying for something great. Of course, my parents didn't know that. I hid that. Even from myself, I started hiding it later in the teenage years. Because my home was not, my parents did their best, as most parents, but I did not learn emotional expression. I did not learn connection. I did not learn feelings just to feel. I had to stuff my feelings. I had to literally stuff it down with food for many years. So for me, not feeling and not being conscious of what was going on inside of me was natural. But this is what happened when that part of me surfaced and I shared it with the guys. They encouraged me. And I signed up for a local acting class. But because of COVID, it kept being pushed back and it kept being cancelled. And then one day I opened up my Twitter account for Men's Corner and I saw an actor who I've been following. He's one of those, I love it, the old school Italian-American actors, Al Pacino, all those guys there. Al Pacino is one of my favorite actors. But this particular guy, his name is Chas Palminteri. Now back in the 90s when I was growing up, one of my favorite movies that was on television and I always was glued to it, to the screen when it was on, was Bronx Tale, A Bronx Tale, with Robert De Niro and Chas Palminteri. If you haven't watched it, check it out. If you like old school neighborhoods and the man and boy stories, mentorship, gangs, crime, and masculinity in that way. And I was glued to the screen when that movie came on. And so I saw that this actor, Chas Palminteri, was offering acting classes one-to-one. It was amazing. So I said, wow, how about instead of waiting for that local acting class, which was supposed to be a week's workshop, how about I ask for a refund, take my money back, add some more money, because it wasn't cheap and that's okay, we're talking Hollywood, and buy one session with Chas Palminteri. Because I figured that for 1 week with those guys, I would rather spend an hour with Chas Palminteri because he would tell me whether or not it was worth pursuing. Because maybe I didn't have any gifts. Maybe I didn't have any acting goodness. Maybe it was just all a childhood dream. What's the point of pursuing it if it's just not real? Maybe it is just a childhood dream. Long story short, I did that. One day, I was face to face on the screen with Chas Palminteri. And he asked me to do some things that I'd prepared beforehand, a monologue. And he kept saying, "You're very good. You're very good." I couldn't believe that he would say that because I never acted, I never had acting lessons. I was in my mid-30s, but he kept encouraging me. He said, "Listen, you should pursue that. You should pursue that. What I see is the beginnings of something. You have something." So I was overjoyed. I mean, Chas Palminteri, thank you so much, Chas. I was overjoyed. This was such an encouragement. Part of me just came back that day. See, that's part of, we're talking about integration, inner integration. Part of me came back. I was full of joy. And so, consulting with my friends, especially Michael, who is an actor, I said, what shall I do? Shall I go and try and study? And he said, listen, act. Pursue local opportunities to act. Sign up for something. So I said, okay. I signed up for, in a local website where you can find acting work. And I was applying for jobs. I didn't hear from most of them, but I was suddenly approached by someone who had found my profile. And it was a remake of The Seagull by Chekhov. And again, thank you for those people. The name of that theater company is Dionysius Theater. They're a local theater group. And they were amazing. I mean, they were willing to give a chance to someone like me who is never acted. And here I was with people who acted, been in theater since they were children. Some of them went to theater schools and places to get that kind of education to express themselves. And I never was. Mine was quite the opposite in many ways. I spent my youth suppressing my true self and trying to be some man that I wasn't. Suddenly, I was immersed myself into the theater world, and I was doing Chekhov. It was surreal. It wasn't real for me. And it was very, very, very hard. Let me tell you something. If you want to pursue your dreams, don't listen to the polished version. Don't listen to the Hollywood version of that. It's tough, it's gritty, and it's awkward. I was a grown-up man trying to become like a child again. But this is the whole point. It needs to be difficult. Otherwise, everyone would be pursuing their lost and long-forgotten dreams. It has to be difficult. You have to feel stupid. I felt stupid. Surrounded by these people, feeling I should be a man, and here I am pretending I should know better by now. I'm nearly 40 years old. But that wasn't true at all. Part of me came back. And during those rehearsals, this is where it's tied in with food, because I would fast, because for me that was a spiritual experience. I wanted to be sharp, and I discovered by this time that there's nothing more masculine and more that keeps you more spiritually sharp, in tune with your spirit, in tune with God, than fasting. fasting is amazing. So I would just drink water all day and just have some black coffee and go and do those rehearsals. And then I would eat in the evening. And normally, after fasting, I was always starving. So I'll have a huge meal after fasting. But I never felt bad about it because it was, I'd been fasting for 24 hours. And so I had been preparing, knowing that after fasting, after that whole day and, being in theater in the evening, I'd be starved. And driving home, I did not feel, from those rehearsals, I did not feel any hunger. Coming home, having the huge meal of pasta, the huge bowl of pasta, the glass of wine, I did not want to eat it. I was feeling so rewarded. I was feeling so satiated, so blessed, so filled up by those experiences that I ate about 1/3. And I drank about 1/3 of what I was expecting to, what I would normally eat and drink. I would leave most of my wine and leave half of my pasta, most of my pasta. And I was thinking, what's happening here? I started noticing a pattern. Every time after theater, after rehearsal, I would eat a lot less, especially carbohydrates, which has always been my go-to food. Bread. I grew up with lovely, soft, homemade bread. And then pasta. And it's like, wow, this is gone now. My addiction to food has just been squashed. I'm eating normally now. And here's why. Because there was a part of me that I had lost when I was growing up that needed expression. It couldn't be expressed, so I suppressed it. And I numbed that pain, that longing with food. I stuffed that longing down using food, literally stuffing it down so that I feel satiated. Only it didn't last because afterwards I felt bad. Like any addiction, the satisfaction is only momentary, it does not last. But when I was going to those theater lessons, those theater rehearsals, I was expressing a part of myself. I was playing. I was being young again. I was interacting in that lovely, expressive way with people. I was surrounded by people who got me, who understood that world, that beautiful world of expression, of offering your gift to the world. And that part of me was fed. That was food. Jesus said, I have food you don't know anything about. Spiritual food. I was giving my soul that spiritual food. And so when I was going home, I only took food that my body needed, not more. My soul did not need to be suppressed with food because my soul had been expressed and was happy. If that's you, if you're overeating, you may not be an actor, you may not go and need to do what I did with acting, but you're suppressing something. There's a part of you that needs expression. If you're overeating, a part of you that needs expression, that's been lost over the last decades and years, needs to come out. But you're suppressing that subconsciously with food. This is what the process has looked like for me, and that's what it looks like for people that I work with in my coaching business. Number one, when we grow up, we lose parts of ourselves. Number two, to reclaim them, we need to repent. We need to return to them. We need to change our minds. Repentance means turn back and say, oh my goodness, what have I done? I've lost something growing up. I've suppressed something. I hated parts of myself. Like I used to hate a part of me that loved to act. I did not like that because it was not manly. We need to embrace those parts, those silly, foolish, young, childish parts of ourselves. Number three, we need to give them what they were made for. We need to give them what they're longing for. That longing that we suppress with food, we need to discover what it is and give it to them. Painting, acting, writing, dancing, it doesn't matter. Swimming, it doesn't matter what it is, but you need to discover it. It probably is many different things. And then you need to be willing to become childlike. Be free to fail and learn new things again. When I was doing these acting lessons, oh my goodness, I felt so foolish. I mean, there were these young girls, and here I was in my 30s, failing them because we were doing this choreography. At the end of the show, we had to bow and then exit one by one. And I was failing them. I was bumping into these young women. I was feeling like a fool. And yet, I mean, driving the car on the way back, one time I actually felt like crying. I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Well, there's a reason why. I'm doing this for my soul. So you have to let your ego go. Let down your ego. Let down your defenses. Let down your masculinity. Because this is part of your masculinity. You cannot be a whole man unless you reclaim your childhood self. And then you empower it. For me, Part of becoming a fully expressed man, a man who is not shy, a man who is willing to put himself out there and make eye contact with people and not be ashamed, not be self-conscious, was reclaiming those childhood parts of ourselves. Those childhood parts of me that I used to despise. Looking at actors like Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, and I was saying they were actually quite manly, those guys. And yet, why was I feeling not manly? Because that's how I grew up. I grew up believing that, not believing, nobody told me that, but just looking at other men around me, my dad, and they're tough and they're strong and they're quiet. They don't do childish things like acting. They're not free in that way. So I had to build muscles. I had to eat too much. I had to do all these things. I had all these addictions and all these emotional suppressions in order to fulfill that destiny. Only to discover that this destiny was not my destiny. I was a product of my background, and so were you. Maybe you've grown up with a stiff upper lip. Maybe you've grown up feeling foolish if you express yourself. Maybe you struggle to be playful. I encourage you, reclaim that young part of yourself. You will not regret this.